Later this summer, Idaho's abortion laws will change. The Supreme Court opinion in Dobbs versus Jackson overturns, the precedent of Roe v. Wade, returning the abortion law decision to individual states, like the state of Idaho. With that development, we expect abortion to be essentially outlawed in the Gem State beginning in August. It is important to note there are some exceptions for cases of rape, incest, and medical emergencies in Idaho. But the conversation is state to state right now. Abortion laws will look vastly different across the United States. Now, in Idaho, the legal community is now working to fully understand how the Idaho abortion law will actually operate in practice. Police departments are talking internally about how investigations into potential illegal abortion cases will go, and the public is waiting and watching to see how all of this will play out in reality. A big test here is seeing how an illegal abortion case will play out in the court system in Idaho. And there's a lot of unknowns right now, as well as plenty of gray area. There's also a conversation about county prosecutors, the elected officials that are tasked across Idaho with deciding if a legal case that is forwarded to their office will be pursued in an Idaho courtroom. Could this new law introduce dangerous partisanship to a county prosecutor's office now or in the future? Well, for expert insight on the topic and discussion around it, I spoke with Twin Falls prosecutor and president of the Idaho Prosecuting Attorneys Office Association, Grant Loebs. And we began talking about how difficult the new law will be for prosecutors to handle. Yes, this is an emotional topic, and there are still many questions to be answered. But Prosecutor Loeb says this is the job, to prosecute the laws that the state legislature passes.
Like anything else, we just read the law that the legislature passed. We try to interpret it properly. We try to put it into effect in a rational legal way as foreseen by the legislators who passed it. And, we'll just wait and see how it actually plays out. I don't know how many cases we'll have, that the police bring to us that contend that this law has been violated. Your guess is as good as mine on that.
Do you get the feeling that the abortion law in Idaho will be less or more complicated than other things that you handle right now, or is it kind of too early to tell? As you touched on, no one knows how many cases like this will even be referred to prosecutors' offices.
Doctors or abortion providers have rules to follow under this statute. It's not an absolute prohibition. So I think the complexity will be in determining whether any of the exceptions exist and looking into the facts surrounding the particular case and determining whether one of the three major exceptions exists in a case. And that's usually just, looking at the evidence and obviously providing the defense attorney in a case with all of the information that we have, and asking that defense attorney, as we do in every case, to come forward with anything that mitigates or changes, the report that we've gotten from law enforcement. So it's a long process, and I think it'll be a long process in these cases if they, in fact, come forward to us.
Prosecutors in Idaho are elected positions. I'm curious if you have any concerns or thoughts about the idea of partisan prosecutors who would run on the idea of, I'm going to prosecute all these abortion cases, or like you mentioned, you'd have a prosecutor that would say, I don't care if the law says I'm not going to prosecute those.
I would think that either point made by a prosecutor candidate is an illegitimate one. I think that your job is to enforce the law to the best of your ability. And, that doesn't mean there's no discretion in the enforcement of the law in a particular way, in a particular case. But I think to just blanket say, I am either going to be as harsh as possible, or I am either going to ignore the law entirely, I think that's an inappropriate position for a prosecutor to take. Obviously, if you have those positions as a human being, that will color how your office prosecutes the case and how it uses its discretion. But, we elect humans to these jobs. We don't elect robots. And, that's a position we will learn once the law starts to take effect and we start to see how it's handled. I think that the only appropriate position for a prosecutor to take is that they'll look at each case on its merits as it comes forward to them.
Specifically in Idaho, do you think it's necessary or important for the medical community and the legal community to have some type of a conversation about, where is the line or where is the gray area in terms of, I guess the phrase is to save the life of the mother? I know that there's a lot of intricacy there, and at the same time, are you and your colleagues expecting calls from doctors that are saying, I don't know if I should do this surgery or do this procedure or not? Could you give me legal advice here on the spot?
Well, we certainly can't do that. We can't give legal advice on the spot to somebody. And, we don't have a hotline, where my phone is red. And when the red phone rings, I answer a doctor and I tell him whether he can do an abortion or not. That any more than any other person who's thinking about doing anything else that could possibly be a crime. But I think it is appropriate, given the massive change that this is, to have a discussion between prosecutors and law enforcement and the medical community, because I think none of us wants to see cases where we are prosecuting doctors for doing something that doctors believe that they have to be doing. And so I think that a discussion is a good thing.
Another major topic Prosecutor Loebs and I talked about: how will law enforcement interact with the new law, in the sense of how will departments handle calls about illegal abortions? Do departments need new resources to handle cases? Will there even be cases to investigate? How do you investigate? Who can report something like this? There will be a lot of conversations between prosecutors' offices, local police, and the medical community. Of note, though, Boise police put out some info on this topic while addressing the rallies and protests at the Capitol over this weekend. And in a series of tweets, BPD writes in part, quote, "The Boise Police Department understands the community's interest on the impacts of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women Health Organization, its impacts of Roe v. Wade and Idaho law." They add, "Pending legal review and input from Boise City Council, Boise Police are not planning on providing additional resources to investigate reports regarding abortion. We understand that there are many strong feelings on this issue, and we will follow the direction of our legal team." There's a lot to follow here, and we will be keeping a close eye on it.